Welcome to the MOE podcast.
A place where individual stories come to life.
This is how we need to be communicating with people. This is how we support people's personal development.
It's important to speak about people believing in people.
The more you're able to let go of your limitation, the more you step into your power, your inner authentic power.
MOE, a place for me, others, everyone.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the MOE Podventures. I'm joined today by Alex Whitton. Alex, great to have you on.
Yeah, Alex, thanks so much for having me.
Two Alexes in one place, always slightly confusing. Alex, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you like to go through life without referencing your job title, your age, or your relation to anyone else.
I'm Alex. Yeah, I suppose who I am is like an ongoing and emerging question, which I think is why I didn't prepare for this, or that's my get out of jail card in the sense of, like in this moment, I'm noticing like I am curious, maybe a bit tentative, but yeah, like very much uncovering more of who I am now rather than who I thought I was or who I think I need to be, which is always an interesting one, which is also why it's so hard sometimes, isn't it, to go, I'm not like in relation to these things is so much easier because we know them as concepts.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe what this question's getting at is who are you when no one else is around? Like who are you when you're in a forest on your own? And that like, well, yeah, I'd be this person is I think what we're trying to get to, or that like core sense of self.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as you say that, it's reminded me of this was maybe a couple of years ago. I like went to a bookshop on my own to get some books, and like there were a few things out of character of that. Is one, I was like just doing it because I wanted to do it, and at the time anyway, and getting some books because I wanted to get some books, and I didn't have an intention of, oh, I'm going to go buy this book. And so yeah, it felt like there was a high level of unknown and novelty in a way that usually isn't. And I think there's a really interesting thing there because and almost maybe why that question is so difficult, right, is how often are we really with ourselves? And yeah, like how often are we in like ourselves in a kind of grounded and connected way of like, yeah, this is who I am. And it's like coming from the inside out rather than how I am because of all these things around me or all these roles or expectations. So yeah, it's a really great question, I think, and one to constantly revisit.
Yeah. And Alex and I have some extra context in that we've been coaching each other for maybe a year now, definitely months, probably somewhere around a year, maybe longer. We do a coaching exchange. I coach Alex one session, and then they coach me the next. And we also do some supervision for each other, and we'll make sure that any references we make to things that may have come up in sessions that come up in this podcast episode, we'll make sure to illuminate those and give you the context so that you can understand them too. Yeah, and big shout out to skills exchanges, which always for me feel particularly sentimental or rich.
And I'm just going to pause there, Alex. I just got my coaching note up. Our first session, our coaching exchange, was October 2022.
Wow. Okay. 3 years.
Yeah.
2.5 years. That's great.
And I still don't know how to do the squared sign that Alex managed to put on the meeting invite, which is Alex squared.
Great. And I do love that my coach is also called Alex. It always makes me laugh. Okay, so we know who you are. Give us an overview of your portfolio career in this moment.
So in this moment, I work mainly as a coach, or now, how do I describe now? Like coach, facilitating, and kind of delivering workshops. And yeah, I mean, I think like the workshop aspect is usually if I'm kind of conveying some content that I've thought of or find like, meaningful. But yeah, alongside that, and maybe I'm talking these things into being a bit more. I I've been writing a novel for even longer than we've been coaching each other. Uh, yeah, and I think that's like continuing to emerge, and it's really interesting because like a while ago maybe really liked the idea of doing that full time, but yeah, I don't know what that would look like now, or yeah, like recently thought, is coaching actually the launching pad to writing in the sense of do one thing that feels scary and beyond my comfort zone, but really energizing to then be able to go, oh, now I can do this thing, which feels even scarier because there's like an even greater sense of you're not even in dialogue with people. You're like, here's this thing that's fixed on some pages. And yeah, but yeah, so what it looks like now is I work as a coach. I've been doing that since September 2024, full time. But have been coaching. Well, I did my MOE training in 2017, and was doing it part time for a couple of years before recently taking the plunge into like fully self-employed life.
Yeah. Yeah, great. And a transition I was really close to in our coaching sessions. And so with this portfolio of coach, facilitator, writer, roughly what percentage of your energy is spent on each of those things?
Yeah, it's funny because I can actually be almost super practical and go. The writing is about 15 minutes a day because that's the practice I curated
Hmm.
actually just before the pandemic when I finally went, I'm going to try and write this something consistently. And I thought I'll just start 50 minutes a day before, I start work. So whatever percentage 15 minutes is of a week per day. And then, yeah, the coaching is, yeah, so we're like a Monday to Friday thing probably doesn't feel like, I don't see it in the same way as, a Monday to Friday, like career or profession. Um, And yeah, that I think encompasses things like the facilitation. So I do some delivering more of my own workshops actually on like what it is to lead and live authentically. The spoiler there is I think they're the same thing, leading and living. Yeah, we can maybe talk about that a bit more. And one of the things I'm learning as well is like, while I love coaching and facilitation, almost certainly if all of my time was coaching and facilitation, none of my time would eventually become coaching and facilitation just because of all of the other aspects around it. Like the idea of, what are the things you need to run a business, which unfortunately sometimes are administrative, but also like rest has become far more like present in like the importance of it. And then on the facilitation front, most of the facilitation and like workshop stuff I've been doing recently is for a charity called Spark Inside, who do coaching in prisons in the community, supporting people who've got experiences of the criminal justice system. Yeah, so I realised that I've not really given you any hard percentages. I noticed that I'm probably really good at steering away from hard numbers, however useful they can be sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no stranger to receiving answers in the abstract from coaches or like, well, I'm actually not going to pin myself down or give you advice here. I'm just going to talk about it in more general terms, and we love it.
And actually, it makes me think, in part, like as I made that like non-Monday to Friday distinction, a big thing I've been doing or to do is I'm also a podcast host and editor for the Coach's Journey podcast. And I thought of that because I was doing that on a weekend recently. So yeah, funny that I'd totally forgotten that. But it's actually a really cool part of what we do, or what I enjoy doing as well. And actually there's a point here, isn't there, of like what are the real percentages versus the perceived percentages?
Yeah, or what has like an inflated or an exaggerated size in our mind. Yeah. And talking about Monday, Friday, and talking about a bit of work at weekends, tell us about something you do to structure your work week, work month, or anything around how you schedule work or fit work into your life that feels like it supports you.
Yeah, yeah, great question. That's definitely been a learning curve recently as well, kind of moving to self-employed. I think yeah, maybe and I promise I'll answer the question. This is when you ask someone that does coaching a question, they'll meander for a bit. But it feels relevant. I think one of the things I learn and have been learning since fully working for myself is that what's more important is the value you create with your time, not the amount of time you spend on something. And obviously, while the amount of time can be important to creating something because like hours input make a difference. Yeah, like you can definitely spend 12 hours a day doing things that won't necessarily create what you hope to create when you're working for yourself. And I think that's important because I think that is quite different to when I was employed and salaried, because like, to an extent, while you're always going to receive like pay for your day, and
Yeah.
like to an extent, regardless of the value, I'm sure that if the value was rubbish continually, you'd eventually probably not be paid for it. But that's really interesting, or that has been interesting, and thinking about how do I structure my day and approach it, because perhaps some of the things that I do to create value can feel scary, and these are the longer term things like sharing my work in order to work with more people. It's like an essential part of my practice as a coach, my business, but can be scary. And so I almost always go, I could just do another coaching session, because actually that's what I do this for. Won't that be great? And that is potentially at the expense of knowing that I need more space to think about the long term. And I often use, I've moved to using a kind of garden metaphor or analogy, in the sense of in some ways my whole life doing my business is a garden, and that means that depending what you want your garden to be like, you've got to tend to different parts.
Yeah.
And so and some of those bits like come more naturally or feel easier, like mowing the lawn is probably a more straightforward task. Nonetheless important for the garden, but actually your veg patch is going to be really important if you want to get some sustenance from the garden as well. But yeah, so how I now like stretch my time, I think one of the big moves has been ensuring that I give myself like as much as possible a meeting-free day a week to do things like invite people to coaching conversations who I just love to coach, as that ongoing practice of committing to sharing my work and overcoming that fear of sharing my work, and thinking about what is it I want to create, and then how might I do that. And again, like the garden, it's like, how am I planting the seeds and tending to them, knowing that next week I won't have 100 runner beans to eat. And also I think what I'm learning, which I mentioned earlier, that kind of rest piece is really important for supporting that. I think, again, noticing like energy is different to my past role, which we can talk about more, but for quick context, I was CEO of a small charity called Universal Education. And there was obviously, because we were a team of 6, there was some inherent structure that almost makes like choosing what to do easier, because you have to fit it around things like weekly team meetings or weekly fundraising meetings. And we had this broader seasonal aspect to the fact that we would deliver residentials in the spring and the summer. So there was always, even though I was less involved in the programmatic aspects, there's always an element of seasonality for the team. And so that helps shape your time, almost being part of a bigger whole there. But definitely practices, they almost have become more important now. So like, what's my morning routine, which often involves giving myself quite a lot of space to warm into the day. And we've talked about this before, I think. So, things like meditation, time to read, time to write. And importantly, it's like doing those things without cramming them either, because otherwise I feel like if I start my day rushed, I'll rush throughout my day, and then it becomes set on like the completion of things rather than the experience of them. And I feel like I've answered your question, Alex, but done what I'm prone to do, which is talk for long enough that I've forgotten it.
It's always a sign of a great coaching question. When your coachee, riffs or brings up so much from their subconscious, they actually forget the question. Yeah. So, what specific things do you do to change your work week or work day that feel important? One meeting-free day a week is a really nice example. Is there anything else you feel in how you structure the work in your life that feels like something you've done specifically to help yourself?
Yeah, I think two things is like noticing the patterns or behaviors that I like have become habitual, if not helpful, in my old ways of working and trying to shift them. So one of them being, I guess I do really value learning and like reading widely and really love like exploring the craft of coaching. Yeah,
Mm.
but persistently would have that blocked in my calendar and move it at the like to be able to fit something else in. And so I think there like the ongoing shift for me is trying to think about the well, where will I be with this thing in 10 years' time? Because that's when I'll see probably or like a few years' time the fruits of some of the things that I'm doing now. And I think really easy just well for me to not think about in the 10 like the 5 or 10 year time aspect. And I think in parts it's really difficult to know where you'll be, but my friend always, one of my favorite things he always says is the years tell us things the days can hardly know. And so it's like, what will the
Whoa.
combination of those days be?
Mm.
But yeah, to go back to, yeah, so specifically, it's like that day a week. There's also small things like it's letting go of, oh, well, I have to start at 9 and I end at 5:30. I'm being better at finishing around 5:30 because I really value having an evening. But there's small things like yesterday, I went for a walk when I finished because I finished the day working at home. So that when I then re-entered the home, it felt like, oh, I left work and come back rather
Mhm.
than moving towards what's the next task. I think it's trusting like when I do have an energy flow. So yeah, like if it's 5:30 and actually it's like, oh, I feel like I'm really into this, just
Mhm.
trust that a bit more. So yeah, trust being a big thing there. But then yeah, appreciating. Um, so it's like yesterday's a great example. So I did some work for Spark Inside, which means that uh, I started my first coaching session was at 9, and so before that, traveling to prison. So I kind of got up at like quite early to do that. And so appreciating when I got home at 2, it wasn't like, well, I've traveled for an hour and already had lunch, so I should crack on with it. It was actually like, well, I'm noticing I'm tired.
Mhm.
I've done 3 hours of coaching and 3 hours of traveling. Let's just take a pause. And that's like a new practice is those moments of pause. I often find like I'll try and go for a walk, before I start something in the morning, like around lunchtime in the afternoon. And actually that like the other thing is I don't know if it is a word, but if it isn't, let's make it one, monotasking. So
Mm.
I notice when I'm tired because probably the rate at which I open BBC Sport increases dramatically, or the rate at which I'll check emails or messages, um, and really trying to be focused on, well, I'm making myself coffee, like while it brews, like just wait for it to brew. Like I'm
Mhm.
still brewing the coffee, um, and that's like an ongoing practice that's
Mm.
helpful. But yeah, it's really all a learning thing. So like morning routine is really valuable. Like that sense of trusting in where the energy is. Like trying less to force things. Um, uh, and yeah, like space to reflect on that as well. So
I love that. Especially if you focus on impact or output rather than the time spent. That feels like a really rich reflection and a good lesson, or like a really valuable piece of wisdom.
mm,
Sometimes we do achieve what we're looking to achieve in much quicker than expected, and then it's right to move on or stop working. And that does feel really like atypical to say, or like a bit wonky even to speak to, with like a really accepted social paradigm of the longer you work, the better it is, or the higher the output.
Yeah, and to jump in there as well, Alex, I think like probably the thing that's made that easier for me is recognizing that, I'll coach clients who talk about similar things. And so it feels like I can't do that with integrity if I don't try and follow my own energy or intuition there.
Mm,
And that being easier said than done, because the appreciation of this is really difficult for me to say it is good enough to finish now, um, or to trust my intuition here. Like, it's something I'm still learning. And so with that experience, it feels like I can, um, more authentically and with integrity support others in my coaching who are going through that, and also with that insight of, it doesn't feel right for me to support you to do what you want to do if I'm not also trying to do it.
mm.
And be clear, they're trying to do what I want to do, not necessarily trying to do what they want to do.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting distinction, and it's something I definitely have quite a strong opinion on. That, yeah, you hear it a lot, like how can you ask? I've heard it, I think, from Tony Robbins, being like, how can you ask someone to pay you this much for coaching if you're not paying the same amount for coaching for yourself? Or it's like, we can only take people as far as we've been ourselves. You're not ready to love unless you love yourself. Like, these ideas I feel are quite common. And for me, and this might be a bit of an uncomfortable opinion, or a hot take for some people. For me, I feel like they're in a way gatekeeping people from experimenting
Mm,
and from learning as they do, rather than from being qualifying themselves by having done something themselves before they do it with someone else. And in that, I want to acknowledge that there's a really rich benefit to having done something yourself, or to understanding something deeply before you maybe ask someone else to do it, or before you go through it with someone else. And also, I really believe in the human experience being a journey of discovery, and doing things from a place of inexperience and not knowing.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I really like that perspective. I think, yeah, two things that really stand out to me is one, often when I talk to people about what coaching is, I draw it as a distinction between, if you put like the coachee in the center, like a mentor stands in front of them and guides
Mm,
them, like and I'm doing it kind of at high level. That I kind of therapist is behind them, and that's part because of nature of a lot of the focus on the past. But the coach stands alongside them because we're looking to move forward with them. But
mm,
importantly, like, we don't have the answers. I think to what you were speaking of, like, really, it's that appreciation that we're all always exploring something, and
mm.
so we don't have to have explored what someone's explored to be able to support them in that navigation.
Yeah.
It's more that we're human and have had what are on that perpetual journey of exploration. That's like something I heard on a podcast that I really like to sort of, so the meaning of life is never arriving. And
Mm,
so, yeah, and so in some ways, like, how are we supporting one another in partnership to,
mm,
like, to navigate essentially. Um, and then Philip Crocker, who's a coach, he's got his own podcast, has this term, the alongside, which isn't just a coach, but it feels like that's a really core part of coaching. And I think more and more, as particularly through the what I've learned in doing work with Spark Inside, is sometimes one of the most important and valuable things you can do as a coach is show people you're human. Because
mm.
people are so used to being in like hierarchical forms of support where
Yeah.
you are bestowed with this sense of being an expert.
Hmm.
And it's really difficult sometimes to go, well, I don't have the answer. Um, when you're also like that other voice in your head says, but you are paying me to help you find the answer.
Hmm.
But it's, yeah, both trusting in that process, and obviously that foundational belief is that, yeah, together we can find that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It makes me think of this phrase soft power, where the power and strength is in the vulnerability, is in accepting and sharing where you don't know. And I heard your point as kind of how can I don't need to be trying to do the same thing as my coachee, but I need to be trying to live with authenticity just as they come to greater authenticity themselves. And I'm maybe like gonna go like one step further and say it's or showing your humanity. It's acknowledge that there'll be ways that me showing up in my life where I'm not showing up in my life with authenticity, and that will be a given for every single one of us. Everyone listening, yeah, you too. Sorry, every everyone I've ever had on the podcast. We all have ways in which we're not showing up as our authentic, truest, most beautiful selves, and that I don't need to be turning up at absolute authenticity in order to be able to be a really meaningful coach for you or to be a really impactful coach for you. And also I really see where showing that authenticity or showing your leadership in how you structure the partnership, in how you do occasionally share anecdotes from your own life can have a really positive impact.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like what you described there is the process of being human. Um, like these don't necessarily feel like the right words for it, but like in some way, our life is always a work in progress.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, Robbie Swell's already been on the podcast, but I remember he once said to me, it's like you don't, for better words, don't have to be fixed before you can support someone.
Absolutely.
Because, yeah, if what we're saying is the case, which I think we both think it is, we'd never be coaching anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I really love your point that when we share that humanity, that vulnerability, it can really allow other people to also connect with parts of themselves that maybe they're not proud of, or maybe that they don't feel so excited about celebrating, sharing, or platforming.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm curious here, Alex, in the sense that I think it feels important to say, I'm not necessarily saying that we need to insert ourselves in a coaching conversation and talk about our vulnerability. Therefore, I suppose, like, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share what I think as it comes up, but yeah, how do you do that in your coaching?
Mm. Yeah, where have I felt it's been useful to share my vulnerability or to share parts of my own story? Yeah, I think one place is where I feel it helps normalize or validate their experience. I think a big part of being comfortable with a human experience is understanding that what we're experiencing or how we're reacting to life or the world around us is normal or is acceptable. I think there's a lot of self-judgment in the world of I'm thinking these thoughts, it must mean this, or like, oh, I'm broken because, or like I'm not as valuable or worthy or worthy of love because. And I think when people affirm, normalize, or validate our experience, it allows us to let go of some of that self-judgment. And often I'll speak to that when coaches share things that are like, yeah, this reaction came out of me, or like I was surprised that I was noticing this in me, or like I feel like this, and I'll often try and normalize that rather than giving an anecdote or sharing my own vulnerability. It'll be like, and that's totally normal to react like that because you have a nervous system and you are in an unfamiliar setting, or because and you're doing something you've never done before, or you're doing something that touched on sensitivities from that you'd experienced previously, whatever it is, like normalizing verbally. And I think it's rare that I bring in anecdotes where that share that vulnerability. I think because there's a fear of almost putting the coachee in a role of rescuer victim. where I'm a victim because I've shared a vulnerability. I think I tend to stay away from sharing anecdotes around that vulnerability because I'm concerned that the coachee might go into the switch roles and be holding space for me, or responding to what I've shared as if it needs a response rather than as just another opportunity for them to reflect on their own experiences and think about something from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, yeah, I think that. Yeah, I agree, and I think I mean it goes back to that process versus content, and I think it's in some ways it's like how are we role modeling the process that we're trying to facilitate,
Mm,
and also like the humanness that involves, and that sense of coaching is a process and not a performance. So as you were talking, things that came to mind as well is there have definitely been times where I've paused and gone, hold on, that was a rubbish question. Let me ask a different one, or acknowledging a
mm,
question, and I've just completely forgotten it.
hmm
Uh, yeah, or yeah,
Yeah, and something I do that maybe is kind of in this vein. Often when I feel like I've got a real gift, and often they're in the form of affirmations. I do a lot of work creating affirmations in my own life and journaling. So I journal around something that's coming up in my life, and then I kind of try and, okay, so what's the wisdom here that supports me? And one of the ones I've been using for the last like 6 months or so, um, is my fulfillment in life is a vast delta, like a river delta of beautiful waterways. And I can see you smiling as you hear it because you know this. And this has really helped me get away from uh, a tendency to believe that my life is all about my work, or all about this romantic partnership I have with someone, or all about my friendships, or all about this one hobby that I'm just really into. And it helps remind me about all the different anchors and stability points and streams of fulfillment in my life. So often I share with coachees when they share something and I feel like, oh, I've actually found the wisdom or the affirmation that really support someone in this position. I'll often say something like, can I share a nugget of wisdom I found when I went through something similar? And then I'll share that vulnerability of like, yeah, so I have this tendency, or part of my brain has this tendency to believe that life is all about this one thing, like the thing that's most like alive or brightest in my life. And the wisdom that I found that helps me be more grounded in this is, and then I'll share like whatever it is. And that feels kind of like that. And like, yeah, I guess, and thinking about my hesitation to share because of worry about getting into victim, like rescuer mode, I feel like in sharing, here's the challenge I faced and what I found difficult, and then also here's what I found that helped me, maybe is there's less likelihood that they'll get into feeling like I need support in that moment and trying to give that support.
yeah, yeah, and it feels like what's being highlighted is that that's the thing, isn't it, that makes coaching special is it's human and personal and unique to who we each are and the insights we each have. And so finding what it looks like to continue to, I suppose, role model being vulnerable and human in coaching is like an ongoing process. Like if we talk about this again in 6 months' time, I'm sure we'll have new stories of, oh, I saw
Yeah.
someone do this, or I did this. And I think Mo is an excellent example in the course of the training team is so brilliant at role modeling. Like that's a part of the training almost
Mhm.
of like role modeling the process of coaching, but also right in thinking that a Mo trainer always answers the who am I question first.
Yeah, yeah.
And that sense of saying, I'm willing to go this far, and you also welcome to go as far as you want.
Yeah, I love how on the Mo course we really model coaching principles of like asking rather than telling. Yeah, modeling it's great. And the more involved you are in the course, the more you see how it's different parts of the course are modeling those coaching principles. Okay, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about the company Universify that you were the CEO of. What do
Yeah,
they do?
yeah, would love to. Yeah, so Universify is a charity that's been going for nearly 10 years now, and kind of at the heart of their work is supporting young people aged sort of 14 to 16 from underrepresented backgrounds in the UK to make more informed decisions about their futures that aren't shaped necessarily by the context in which they've grown up, but
Mm.
by their growing awareness of their potential and what they want to do and the knowledge of what the options are. So a big part of the work is um, they're expanding their programs now, but the kind of the core program while I was there, it's a year-long program that starts with a university residential, so a week-long university residential, and then another spring residential oriented around GCSE revision. And importantly, while at the heart of it, so for many of these young people, they'll be from backgrounds where no one in their family's gone to university, but it always, one of the challenges in my role always felt like saying success isn't just about more young people going to university.
Mm.
It's about these young people who almost always go, people like me don't belong here, to be able to make the more informed decision. So a couple of success stories are some students then realize, oh, actually, this university doing this kind of course and this kind of teaching in this location is perfect for me. So I've now ended up doing that. And another
Mm.
one is, I remember a participant who really, like the course reminded them that they really interested in computer science and in particular like cybersecurity. And they found actually the best path for them was like a degree apprenticeship,
Yeah.
not just to go to university and do computer science. And I think behind all of this, so the program used those residentials, but then also participants were paired up with all students are paired up with volunteer coaches that coach them on a monthly basis from that summer all the way through to the end of their GCSEs. And I think there are three core parts. Is one, helping them get clear on, well, what is it that I really want to do uh, with my future, so that they can then consider this experience that I've had, what does that mean? Because also part of the value of going to university is many of these young people have not left, on the residential that is, many of these young people have not left their hometown before.
Mm.
They will likely be going maybe with one or two other people from their school, but they might also be going alone. So it's just thinking about when you're 15, if you left your hometown for the first time and met a group of 30 to 40 completely new people, that's not daunting, but like enormous opportunity as well to learn a lot of things that aren't just, do I want to go to university, but actually, and I remember one of the young people I work with going, this experience means that I feel way more confident going to college where I know no one, because I've proven to myself that I can do this in this context that is Universify. So
Lovely.
yeah.
Great. So loosely focused around increasing or improving access to university, with also this really rich acknowledgement that it's about empowering the entire human being rather than just empowering their specific ability to access a university course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a really big part of that is and connecting it to where they are at that point in their lives, which is, this is my opinion, a really sad fact that the decisions you make and the grades you get age 16 have an inordinate impact on the opportunities open to you.
Mm.
And say you make decisions that get grades that aren't actually like you don't get great grades, or you maybe don't make an informed decision, doesn't mean you can't course correct, but to course correct becomes really challenging.
Hmm.
And so being able to equip the young people both with the grades, like the awareness and insight of what matters to them, and the confidence to
Hmm.
pursue their chosen path, I think at that point is really important.
Tell us a little bit about how the coaches at Universify, how that coach provision is structured. I'm talking specifically like how many sessions, how long the sessions, like what kind of time periods they take place over.
Yeah. So the coaching is in theory monthly, but might vary depending on the coachee. So on that residential in August, that summer residential, they'll meet their coach for the first time and they'll have coaching. And then have it on a monthly basis until they complete their exam. So they'll come back in spring for another in-person session. And the coaching is pitched as holistic in the sense that we encourage students, it's often useful to set 3 goals. And often they are around like academic performance that year, clarity on like future direction and confidence, but they're not always the case. But for some students, they do just use it as a thinking space each month. So I've worked with students who go, I've got to present this thing, and it'd be really helpful to think about, well, how am I going to do that? Or how do I now manage my time in the context of this year being really hectic with revision? But yeah, like all coaching, it varies as well. And add in the variable that it's coordinated largely over email because for safeguarding reasons. But I don't know about you, but I wasn't the best at email when I was 15. So like adding that in, there is some fluctuations, some peaks and troughs. But I think the coaching element really came into its own during the pandemic because it really highlighted the value when the residentials had to move online of just having that space to talk to like a trusted adult consistently who didn't come with judgments about who you need to be or what you want to achieve, and who would just ask, well, what would make this useful hour we've got together? And I think that can be really difficult as well because I can still, I've done lots of coaching and been coached a lot, and still when someone goes, what do you want to get from this hour? I sometimes go, but yeah, I think a really powerful experience to have.
And any reflections on what about it happening during the pandemic or how it was different? Because when I hear you speak about the power of coaching, that seems like something that would also have been true before remote sessions became really common.
I think probably because it was harder for the students to connect with their cohort that they hadn't met in person. And so there was this relationship that they could form that they had probably the depth that they might have had with other students that became harder. However much you kind of try and facilitate that, I think it is difficult.
Yeah. So it was a time when that connection or that empowerment was particularly required, or there was a real lowness or like some real challenge that empowerment really helped with.
Yeah, and I think an element of everything moved online, and we were doing more to, I think, monitor and make the organization of coaching more efficient at that time. So there was probably a bit of a bias there. But yeah, I think people probably became more used to doing things like coaching online in a way that previously they'd have had an in-person session and then it sort of
Nice.
shifts online.
Nice. And now, so that's Universify. Thank you. And focusing a bit more on your story now, you've worked at Universify for about 8 years and you worked your way up to CEO, which a position you were in for just under 3 years. Tell me a little bit about the big lessons that came up that informed your decision to leave that role or that you were shown having left that role.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the two that stand out for me now are I think I think he does this in his written work, but I heard it on a podcast. But Gay Hendricks, who's a writer and I think he's a therapist rather than a coach, would often talk about this Venn diagram where one circle is like what I'm good at, and another circle is what gives me energy. So, firstly, I'd say there are areas of CEOing that I was definitely less good at and could improve. And this probably will be my second point, which I'll get onto. But like ultimately, I think and this is like the real tension is Universal is still an organization I volunteer for, really care about, and I think does amazing work. But this interesting thing of that Venn diagram felt like it was overlapping less for me in the sense
Mm.
of the work that was required of me as the CEO, while there were elements that I felt I was good at, maybe gave me less energy than the coaching work I was doing a day a week at the time. And I think part of that is, when I'd started, it was more operational and got to be on the front line of delivering the work and working with the young people. And for me, there's definitely still is an allure around the story of like growing something.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think the energy wasn't there for me at that time to keep doing it in the way I was doing it. And I think there's another really interesting thing is about a month and a half after I left, I think Universal got like the ball really got rolling on getting a new university partner, which would never have happened if I hadn't sent an email kind of going, I'm leaving, this person taking over, because that door felt like it was closed, but it gave like success the opportunity to go, well, I've never met you before, let's
Yeah.
chat.
I've never tested
Um,
the lock. I've
yeah,
never pushed the door.
exactly. But for me, it felt like I mean, obviously this is all a story, but really validated that, there were like it was right for me at
Hmm.
that point. I've definitely not written off working in leadership in like another organization
Hmm.
again. But I think that's the second learning is like probably my relationship to myself is limiting me and therefore limiting the organization in that
Mm.
like an ongoing pattern I am becoming more aware of is I'm very good at not thinking before doing in the broader sense of being very reactive rather than responsive.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that second part, like the second bit of wisdom that I really took from it is I'd have probably, and I'll put in it like, there's a self-critical spin of when I say I'd have done a better job. So maybe I'll say I'd have done an even better job
Mm.
if I'd maybe taken a bit more time to think about decisions, like and or to push back on this story that I had of like it's only good enough if we can get it all done as like quickly and as efficiently as possible. Whereas there are definitely times where like it would have been totally fine to go, actually, can you give me a bit of time to think about that? But
Hmm.
I felt like maybe things like perfectionism or ideas of, false ideas that to be a good leader, you've got to make like decisive decisions on the spot, or it's about solving
Yeah.
things. Just meant that I didn't necessarily always give myself the space to zoom out and have that perspective.
Mm.
And I think the other context bit to add is like before being CEO, I took over as charity manager during the pandemic. And so it's just a very challenging 5 years. And I think the case of pretty much all charities of during the pandemic, probably all charities, the demand for their work increased. So how do you then meet that while moving everyone online and working online?
Mm.
While I think at that time we lost something like a third or a quarter of our income because of businesses whose income had been affected by the pandemic were unable
Mm.
to, they had to kind of defer their giving. And then we moved into a cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
In general,
Yeah.
like the higher education sector is really challenging at the moment because cash is really tight at the moment.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so uh, that meander, I think there's just two nuggets is, at that point in time, the kind of the energy wasn't there in a way that felt I could do it well and with integrity. Um, and like that broader learning of sometimes really slowing down is vital to speeding up.
Mm. Yeah, I love that first nugget that I kind of heard as just because we're good at something, it doesn't mean we should do it. Just because we're good at something, it doesn't mean it gives us energy or is right for us to be putting right at the center
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. The more I talk about it, I think the more like I can see the stories I had about leadership, or what makes a good leader, that were inauthentic to me, that got in the way of me doing really well. And I think there's this interesting distinction that I talk about now sometimes when I work. It's like we can be being really authentic in a context. And for me, authenticity is showing up as ourselves, but it doesn't mean we're leading in the sense of like taking ownership of us and our lives. So it's like, am I putting myself in the spaces where I want to be authentic?
Yeah.
In some ways
Nice.
that feels like leading. And or, I was being authentic in how I responded, but wasn't necessarily taking the leadership to go, what, I really need some time to think about this, because there was a story that perhaps said, I have to do it this way, or I won't be good enough if we can't fix this immediately.
Yeah. Amazing. And Alex and I spoke a little bit before we started recording this episode about what might come up from our coaching partnership, and where we wanted to maybe not have stuff come up, or where we felt really comfortable with that. And we were both like, yeah, just share anything, and it'll probably be absolutely fine. And if not, we can edit out. So I sharing here, coaching you around that period, particularly around making that decision to, to leave Universify after being CEO for 3 years. One of the bits of wisdom that I saw, or that I see in this story, particularly as you share how a real positive change out of you leaving, there was this really present story that if I leave, it's abandoning the company, or it's going to break the company. And there's that resistance to change in all of us because we're human. And I think it's so common that beliefs around change grow from that discomfort around change. And one of them that was present in that was this this concern that on how a charity would do in going from your leadership to someone else's. And for me, a real piece of wisdom, a real nugget here is that change can be a really positive thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think shines a light on two things. Is one, in the nicest possible way, and like I say, it's myself, like how delusional our stories can be, because like what I really loved is my successor at University was the COO at the time, and so I was working closely with him, which meant that like the handover was quite hands-on in some ways, but there would be moments where 2 or 3 months before I was finishing, we knew that she was succeeding me. There'd be meetings I'd be in, and they would lead, and I'd go, "You're already doing some of these things better than I am," or like, "Oh, I'm learning things from this," which I think, is that really beautiful reminder of sometimes there's the value of change, but also I think two things of what are we holding on to that gets in the way of us being more of what we want. And in the Spark Inside work that I do now, a lot of it's around the idea of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And there's this stage like, after you enter that like unknown world, which is the adventure, before you can claim your reward, stage of like ordeal, death, and rebirth. And I think noticing that, while I experienced lots of imposter feelings around having the title of CEO, partly because they're three meaningless words. Like, what do they mean put together? That's and therefore they can mean anything to anyone. And so CEOing is really dependent on the context. But one of the things I noticed is I went from being charity manager to CEO, and suddenly when I talked about what I did, people's response changed, and that was really odd, but also easy, like can be quite nice to identify with, because we go back to that question at the beginning, like, who are you? And it can sometimes feel less vulnerable to hold this title up, even though I remember hearing something, it's like, if you pin a PhD to a tree, it's still a tree. So yeah, I think there was that change is also just like the letting go of like some deeper stuff, which is that I don't have to be CEO to be good enough in this world or in this life. And it's also amazing because I say that I am becoming more and more aware of how many things there are to be fortunate about in my life. But the things that have been consistent over that time is some like really powerful friendships. My partner but it's so easy to take for granted. Like they don't love me because I'm a CEO. Yeah, and it's that like almost ungroundedness that we can get to is
Mm.
it's just very funny, but then that makes change difficult because yeah, the change is actually far smaller than we think it is when we realize it's just like the changing of a title or a role.
Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, last bit of wisdom I'm going to ask you to share with us. What was or were the things that allowed you to navigate that specific challenge? And if you don't say our coaching, I will be very upset and hurt.
You can edit that out because
Great, great, great.
the first thing that comes to mind is like having a coaching space or a thinking space to
Mm,
I suppose ground in the like what is actually true versus what are all the stories
mhm,
that like driven by fears or wanting belonging and connection, whereas actually neither of those things I was getting. It was fitting in was probably what I was getting, and that's an interesting like distinction, isn't it? Of like what's the difference between fitting in and belonging.
mhm,
I'd also say Bettina, who's now the CEO, their patience, because in some ways they had to like shoulder the most uncertainty because it's like, well, what's happening?
mhm.
Um, and then the rest of the team as well, like, and how like, there's a huge question mark of, well, who's coming in? And then, yeah, what also helped, some of those practices I talked about, things like journaling, meditation, being able to talk to friends about that experience. And actually, like I learned a lot from it in that there were points where we definitely got to good outcomes, but in the least smooth way.
Mm,
And being able to go, oh, and to acknowledge that, go, well, this is the first time that we've been through this, the organization's been through this. And yeah, that kind of support network beyond that of friends, like my partner who probably listens to this, and my parents like had to hear me talk through this like on a day-to-day basis.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's yeah, all of those things that we often take for granted when we're going through change that
Mm,
almost always fewer things are changing than we actually think. It's maybe like one change.
yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, those other things can almost be like the boat upon which we like sail through the changing waters.
Lovely metaphor and a lovely sentiment to end on. I'm going to run you through a couple of quickfire questions. I
Oh,
want really brief answers.
this is gonna be the hardest bit.
Well, some of these questions are quite easy, like the first one. What's your most used social media platform in your personal life?
So, LinkedIn,
Professional life?
LinkedIn.
Uh-huh. What percentage of your impact in coaching is from what you say and do versus the relationship you create?
I'd say both are less important than who you are in that space.
Okay, that's a pass on that question. Um, last gig you went to or live music you saw?
Oh, quite recently actually. There's a publication called Aeon, and they had an event called Feminist Futures, which was looking at utopia through a feminist lens. And there was a band called something Sheep, and I can't remember their name, but they were really excellent. They're a Liverpudlian band. Would recommend them.
Great, great. What did you have for breakfast today?
The usual granola and a piece of toast.
Hmm. When are you a coach?
Always and never.
Big. Any New Year's resolution that you set this year?
Yeah, it's to get up at the same time every day.
Hmm. And lastly, and take your time with this, what's a question you want to ask our community?
Question that's been on my mind, but it feels like the theme of what we've talked about, which is like, how am I in this moment being what I want to become?
Hmm. How am I in this moment being what I want to become? Brilliant. And if anyone wants to share their answers or their reflections on that questions or what that question makes them think, please do so on the LinkedIn post of this episode. Search for Alex Whitton and you'll find
Yeah,
it.
nice. Can I follow up with a second
Alex,
question that I heard on another podcast that I
please.
loved, which is a difficult one, is Like, when did you last feel you weren't good enough?
Ooh, yeah, that's a real bright light getting shined on some things. I've got a question with a really regular coachee of mine. What's in the dark corner?
Oh, no.
Like, what toy have we thrown into the dark corner to never be seen? Yeah, or what thing have we thrown there, but we'll never see again because we don't want to look at it. Lovely. Alex, thank you so much for joining us, talking through your ideas around coaching, sharing your journey at Universify and beyond. It's been great.
Yeah, Alex, it's been a real pleasure. Like, thank you as well for guiding and navigating and stewarding this. And I can also publicly thank you for all of the coaching. That's been wonderful. So thank you.
Likewise, Alex, really appreciate the coaching exchange. Thank you. Until next time. Bye.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Podventures on the MOE podcast. I am Kate, your co-host alongside Alex. If, after listening to today's episode, you feel compelled to share your story, please email info@moefoundation.com. We would love to hear your story and have you here as a guest on the podcast. If you have been enjoying the MOE podcast, please do leave a review. It helps the team so much understand what you want to hear more of, what type of guest speakers you enjoy. If you want to recommend a guest speaker who you think we should be talking to, let us know. We will endeavour to feature them. If you love MOE so much that you don't ever want to miss an update, subscribe to our channel so that you will be notified every time a new episode comes out and you won't miss a thing. That's all from us today. See you next time.